It's November 28th, JLD here, and welcome to MSTR Today and the Treasury Titans. Nothing in this video is financial advice, so sit back, relax, and let's dive on in. But before we do, let's just say happy Thanksgiving to everybody who celebrated that yesterday. I hope you enjoyed your day. If you took some time off otherwise, also hope you had an enjoyable day. Touched some grass, got outside, spent time with family and loved ones. Definitely a quiet day for all intents and purposes, because a lot of people were celebrating Thanksgiving in some form. So we're just going to have some fun today as Michael Saylor kicks things off with another reminder of why Bitcoin exists and why the rest of the world is so slowly realizing, way too slowly, by the way, that they need it more than their next stimulus package. We're talking no drama, no noise, just Michael Saylor calmly pointing to digital scarcity while legacy systems are wobbling at the edges. Ash Crypto zooms out, my man. He shows how much more serious capital is circling Bitcoin right now. This isn't maybe someday money. This is, we're already rotating energy. Like, it's happening. Zinx runs the charts today. He shows us that liquidity is thickening up, supply is getting tighter. Long-term hodlers are locking in. Price structure is looking like it's stretching before the sprint. I'm stretching out. I'm ready for a sprint. Let's go. The classic compression phase, quiet on the surface, pressure building underneath. Bitcoin therapist jumps in with a mindset check. Don't chase, don't panic, zoom out, and just breathe. We talk about the story arc today as well, breaking down how fast the narrative is shifting as more people finally understand Bitcoin as digital property, not as a training toy. So what's happening right now? Strategies, stacking, Saylor's teaching, Bitcoin's tightening the spring, and we are going to dive on in to Michael Saylor, who wants us to just have a happy Thanksgiving. He's sitting back under an orange tree, pondering life itself. I mean, maybe just pondering the fact that all we need is time. All we need is time. Ash Crypto says 2026 has much more bullish catalyst than 2025. We're talking 3 rate cuts, Trump's $2,000 dividend. The Fed chair, who's going to be new, that's on May 26th, is most likely, very, very likely, by the way, not only pro-crypto, but just very dovish, which is going to be very powerful for our bags. SLR easing, possible QE by or before midterm elections. All these catalysts are bullish for Bitcoin and crypto as they will improve the overall liquidity. Do you think the cycle could extend into 2026? I absolutely do. Zinx wants us to remember that we overestimate what Bitcoin can do in the short term and underestimate what it can do in the long term. I promise you, we will look back in 5 years' time and marvel at the fact that Bitcoin was trading under 100K and that there were only a few nations stacking Bitcoin in 2025. Oh, in one state, Texas. Very impressive. Bitcoin Therapist says the more they print, the higher Bitcoin goes. And this is just 125 billion in 5 days. The Fed quietly floods banks with cash again. What's going on? This is the largest short-term liquidity move since 2020. So crazy times. Adam Livingston says, I would trust Michael Saylor to watch my kids more than Jamie Dimon. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer, but why? Saylor would teach them about low time preference discipline and engineering, and Jamie would put them in a structured note with a 20-year lockup and a 47% management fee. LOL, but it's so true. Zinc says, Metaplanet continues its performance today in Europe with a DN3F up 8.13%. Looks like Americans now something to look forward to when the markets open up tomorrow, which is, by the way, today. Looks like Metaplanet is still up around 5%. The past 5 months have been brutal, but it does feel like we've seen the worst of it now. Fun times ahead. Let's go, Metaplanet and the Treasury Titans. Rob Hoddle says, what kills me is that now is the time when investors should be FOMOing into a treasury company like MSTR, not when the MNAV is 3x, but when it's 1x. At 1x, all future Bitcoin is gravy. At 3x, the ability for MSTR to deliver a yield that more than compensates an investor for the premium they pay is very difficult, especially with 650 coins already. This is the most important thing for investors to understand about Bitcoin treasury companies is this is the time to buy when the MNAV is close to 1, or as sometimes like Metaplanet, even under 1. This is where the value comes from. Now we have an epic continuation of Michael Saylor's great interview on Schwab. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Bitcoin is digital energy, right? Either you own it and control it or somebody else does. And so I would just make one more point. If the U.S. doesn't, they should encourage U.S. banks, U.S. investors, U.S. corporations, and taxpayers to own it, right? It's not necessary for the U.S. to own it outright, but it's very, very critical that U.S. banks, U.S. investors, U.S. corporations own it and control it in the same way that it wasn't necessary for the U.S. to own all the oil, but it's pretty necessary for a U.S. corporation to own the oil.
What about the energy side of it? I mean, so many Bitcoin mining companies now pivoting to focus on AI data centers. I've been talking to a number of them. I mean, you've got Iron, you've got CleanSpark, you've got Hive. What are your thoughts on this?
I think that it's been an extraordinary 180-degree turn for the better by the nation. I think maybe the most profound development of technology in the 20th century was nuclear power, nuclear energy, unlimited, clean, scalable energy. And we shut down the programs for 50 years. And in 2020, if you talk to energy companies, they were going to decommission all those nuclear reactors. And we were asking the question, how do we get this nation to embrace the importance of electricity? And if you want to generate infinite clean electricity, the most efficient way to do it is with nuclear technology. So I think there are two things you want to do with energy. One thing is you want to create digital intelligence, right? And that's what AI is. And we discovered the way you create digital intelligence is you feed it extreme amount of energy. You feed gigawatts of energy through very customized silicon chips, NVIDIA chips, GPUs, and then out comes digital intelligence. Well, what the Bitcoin industry discovered is the way you create digital money, digital capital, is you take gigawatts of electricity and you feed it through custom silicon, ASICs, and you generate a wall of encrypted energy to defend the network. And that's what Bitcoin is. So what happened in the last 4 years was the Bitcoin miners were under pressure for using too much electricity by the environmentalists. And we were defending that. We were saying, but we're actually going to create a new banking world order, and it's going to be worth hundreds of trillions of dollars. And so it's a good use of electricity. But we had a hard time winning that battle. Then all of a sudden we have the Chat GPT moment, and people discover that they also need power in order to create digital intelligence. And that turned Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google, right, Microsoft, and hundreds of millions of Americans into true believers. And that entire debate about whether electricity good or electricity bad just went away. And the entire debate over nuclear power went away. And all of those AI data centers, they desperately needed high power data centers. And you know who owned them? The Bitcoin miners. And so as the Bitcoin miners were struggling with the economics of the industry, because the way the Bitcoin works is it gets exponentially more efficient to mine Bitcoin. And so the margins of Bitcoin mining are decreasing. At the point they were struggling, along came a new buyer for those power rights, and they were able to pivot and monetize those power rights. So AI and digital intelligence saved, the Bitcoin miners. And what are they? They're digital power providers, right? And ultimately, the entire industry the market is starting to realize the future is digital capital, digital money, digital intelligence, right? That's the future. And the way you create it is with silicon and electricity. And so if you want your nation to dominate in the 21st century, you better have digital power, you better have digital money, you better have digital intelligence. Right? Just like you want air power or sea power or land power 100 years ago. And of course, I think what everybody's realizing is now it's a mad scramble to harness hydro and natural gas. But ultimately, the solution is nuclear.
Senator Cynthia Lummis recently announced that funding for a U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve can start anytime. This is a massive step forward for a strategic crypto stockpile, and no surprise, was soon followed by a new all-time high for Bitcoin. If you're looking to buy more Bitcoin, BitIRA can help. In fact, BitIRA will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into Bitcoin. This also allows you to buy Bitcoin using pre-tax funds, then continue to invest in it over time as you do any other retirement account. And if you want, you can even add XRP, Ethereum, or other cryptos. BitIRA protects your assets with end-to-end insurance, highly secure storage, multi-encryption, and is registered with the US government. Your IRA is fully IRS compliant. Best of all, you can trade crypto within your retirement account without incurring taxes on any buys or sells. Just go to bitira.com/JLD and request a free info guide. Once you do that and open your IRA, you'll get a free ledger. Think about this. In March, President Trump signed an executive order for the Treasury to manage 200,000 Bitcoin as the foundation for a reserve. That's just the foundation. Go to bitira.com/JLD to open a tax-sheltered IRA in Bitcoin. Fire Nation, when you want more for your business, more privacy, more guidance, more success, it all starts with Northwest Registered Agents. These legends have been helping entrepreneurs launch and grow their businesses for nearly 30 years. They're the largest registered agent and LLC service in the U.S. with over 1,500 corporate guides, real people who know your state's laws and actually care about helping you win. With Northwest, you can build your complete business identity, everything from what your customers see to what they don't, operating agreements, meeting minutes, compliance paperwork, and more. You'll get thousands of free resources, lawyer drafted forms, and step-by-step guides all in one place, and you don't even need to create an account to access them. Best part, privacy is automatic. Northwest never sells your data and handles everything in-house. Don't wait. Protect your privacy, build your brand, and get your complete business identity in just 10 clicks and 10 minutes. Visit www.northwestregisteredagent.com/JLD free and start building something amazing. Get more with Northwest Registered Agent at www.northwestregisteredagent.com/JLD free.
I mean, we could keep talking about energy forever. I find this part of the story just super fascinating. But I just want to know, what is your message out there to the skeptics?
To the Bitcoin skeptics or to the what skeptics?
To the skeptics of Bitcoin and also just broadly crypto.
My message is if you live in Argentina and you've watched the currency collapse completely every 20 years for the past 100 years, and if your family was impoverished 5 times in the century, and an engineer named Satoshi came along with a way for you not to be poor and destitute, and he said, well, it's no more difficult than just put this wallet on your iPhone and now you don't have to be poor, then you would be utterly captivated by that vision. And that is the plight of everyone. If we go on my hand and say, how many people have lived in societies where they had their property rights and their wealth stripped away from it? It's everybody in Africa, everybody in South America. Brazil's currency collapsed, Argentina's currency collapsed, Cuba's got no currency, Venezuela collapsed. Everybody in the Middle East, people in Turkey right now. Russia collapsed 30 years ago. Russia's collapsing now. Everybody in Ukraine. Everybody in China doesn't trust their currency, right? Everybody in Europe doesn't trust their currency. So if you're a skeptic, you must be an Upper East Side trust fund baby, and you're lucky enough to be born rich in the only country in the world where the currency didn't collapse in the last 100 years. And you know, your currency's lost 99.9% of its value over 100 years. The US dollar has debased 7% a year on average for 100 years. So you're probably smart enough, if you're wealthy and a skeptic, to know that you shouldn't store your family's assets in cash dollar bills. You're probably smart enough. You're privileged enough to be able to invest in U.S. real estate and U.S. equities, because you know that wouldn't work in any African real estate or any African equity, right? Or any North Korean equity or et cetera, any Chinese equity. Wouldn't work in Japanese equities either, right? In fact, I could go on and on and on. So you're a privileged person that happens to be rich or happens to have money that's invested in the world's most secure assets in the U.S. But Bitcoin is digital capital, and it's for everybody else in the world that wasn't as privileged as you, for them, it's the difference between 7 billion people living in destitution and 7 billion people having hope. And so Bitcoin is an idea whose time has come. If you're one of those people, right, you're going to cling to it like a diabetic would cling to insulin, right? Before Bitcoin, every company in the world, everybody in the world is a type 1 diabetic. They cannot store economic energy, right? So if you're in that situation, that is life-affirming for you. It's not a laughing matter. That's why people are so passionate about it. But let's say it's not. You're not one of those people. You happen to be one of the 500 million or a billion elite that lives in a very comfortable environment. It just happens to be the best idea for you. It's the ultimate alternative investment. It's an asset uncorrelated to a currency, uncorrelated to any nation state. It's not an equity. It doesn't have counterparty risk. So the reason you ought to look at it, it's the most valuable real estate property. It's basically buying a piece of cyberspace. And if you had a chance to buy an acre of Manhattan in the year 1700, you would have been paying top dollar for it. And then every decade for the next 300 years, someone would pay more. And at what point did buying land in Manhattan ever become a bad idea? It's still a good idea. And Bitcoin is cyber Manhattan. It's one day 8 billion people want to put their money there, and there's only 21 million blocks. That's 276 by 276 by 276. You can't make any more of it. So our view is it's just a good idea. It's the best idea for a conventional investor, but it's a life-saving idea for the rest of the world.
What's the second best? There is no second best.